Hi, welcome to Greener Tidings Garden Centre. My name is Lizzie Alton Roxall. We are from Polokwane, Limpopo province in South Africa. We are a garden centre situated in Polokwane, Limpopo province in South Africa. We are the furthest north province in South Africa, approximately 2 hours south of the Zimbabwe border. Our garden centre is roughly about 13 years old. Our staff's about 30 odd big. That comprises salespeople, guys that do the watering and the maintenance, some landscapers. We also have a pot factory where we manufacture our own pots, water features and pavers. Our garden centre is situated next to the Mall of the North, which is a very big shopping mall in South Africa. We're very well situated within the town. When Cyril Ramaphosa, our president, announced that evening that we were going to be on lockdown, we literally sat there, stared at the TV, and my heart stopped. And the first thing I thought was, what now? There were so many things that needed to be done before we could actually close our doors. Fortunately, he did give us, I think, enough time to get our store ready for the lockdown. There were quite a lot of perishable items in the garden centre, like annual seedlings, vegetable seedlings, all of that type of thing that we needed to get out. We had huge promotions, 30% discounts, selling things off at cost, just to get a little bit of cash flow in, as well as to get rid of the stock. The challenge was that we had to keep our garden centre alive during that time. As you all know, we all have plants. So we had to actually create a bedroom inside the garden centre where one of our guys could actually live there for 5 weeks, and he would then look after the garden centre and do some pruning and fertilising as we would normally. So during that time, we found that you could not do anything. It actually came as a perfect time for myself and my family, because in February and March we were so overloaded with garden centre work, with retail, with landscaping, that at one point we just felt that we could not breathe. It was just getting too hectic. Our lives were rushed, schoolwork, everything was just a bit too much. So even though there are a lot of negative points about the pandemic, the one plus point that I feel from my personal side was that for 5 weeks you could not do anything. There was no pressure from phone calls, there was no pressure from business, there was no pressure from schoolwork. There was just this 5 weeks of time where it actually felt like an early retirement to me, where you could actually be at home, spend good quality time with your kids, with your partner, and just be, and just decide. You wake up that morning and what are we doing today? Today we'll build a fairy castle. Today we'll swim. Tomorrow we'll garden. There was no plan, even though we had a huge list in our kitchen with our lockdown list of we were going to build marble runs and repaint pots and redo cupboards. It was probably the best 5 weeks of my life. During that time, I did help quite a few customers via WhatsApp and email with regards to their gardens. We found that the trend during lockdown was a lot of people were spending a lot of time in their gardens, revamping, changing pots around, and keeping themselves busy. So a lot of people were doing DIY. A lot of the hardware stores and things were still open, so people were repainting, people were fixing up broken things, but people were spending a lot of time in their gardens. So even though we weren't able to sell any product, we were still helping clients via WhatsApp, saying, you know what, those pots you can move over, repaint them bright red and move them over to your pool. Show me what else you've got in your garden. Okay, there's a lovely agave, take that out of the garden, put that in the pot, and it just looked like a new little corner in the garden. So we were helping people in that way. I was flooded with quite a few calls and WhatsApps saying to us, could they just pop in for 5 bags of compost, but things like that we just could not afford. We could not afford to have anything bad happen. And it was just, from my point of view, it was 5 weeks where we didn't need to do anything with regards to work and business, and it was really family time. What we found now is a lot of people have spent that time during lockdown, figuring out what they'd like to do in their garden, what they'd like to change in their garden. And when we opened our doors in May, we found a lot of people were coming in slowly but surely, but still people were very scared to leave their homes. Eventually, when people did come out to the garden centre, they realized that a garden centre is a place of peace, tranquility. It was a safe place. It's not a big retail store where you're in queues and surrounded by a lot of people. You spaced 10, 20 meters apart. It's a lovely, safe environment for you to have brought your kids after lockdown, because it was open air. Even though you're wearing your mask all the time, it still feels like you haven't got your mask on, because it's just this beautiful free environment and an open air environment. We found a big trend in the edible areas and grow your own. We have a department in the garden centre called Grow Me, Eat Me, and we found that about a week or two after lockdown, it was a huge trend to try and get edibles and your own things growing in the garden. So our Grow Me, Eat Me area, we actually had to revamp. That was one big plus in the garden centre. We actually quadrupled the whole area, as our sales were quadrupling for that period of time. We were finding our suppliers were coming up with new varieties of vegetables, new edibles. Even now, a lot of our suppliers are coming up with new varieties and a bigger selection of fruit trees and nut trees. And we're finding that is definitely a big trend at the moment. I do a lot of landscaping. So I'm finding, of all the consults I go to, when I have a consult, 98% of our clients are wanting something edible, whether it's a lemon tree in a pot, a couple of herbs in a pot. Some people go on a full-on corner of their garden with built raised beds, crates that they've made during lockdown that they want to fill with edibles. And we're finding that is still a very big growing market. When we are doing a consult, I always ask, that's the first question, have you got kids? How many kids? How old are they? Boys or girls? Boys need more lawn. Girls want space to draw on the wall. Girls want sand, boys want sand. The ages, anything over 18, 20 are more stuck inside the house on Instagram and all sorts of things. Younger than that, we are trying to entice customers to get their kids out of the house and into the garden. So we're always trying to create activities within landscaping for parents to be outdoors with their family. I'm currently busy with a design for a young couple who've got a 2-year-old and another little one on the way. And we've created, all he wants is a braai, and all she wants is a green garden and something for the kids to do. So we've actually developed this whole little corner. It is a minute garden. It's probably 40 square meters, but we've managed to put in seating area with a braai area, a blackboard wall for the daughter to play in, a little sand pit, and a beautiful green lawn where they can actually sit with the blankets and have a picnic in the afternoon. One of our big challenges after lockdown, and when we had news that there was a possibility of the garden centres opening up, was getting the garden centre ready. The amount of documents and paperwork that we got from SANA, and thank you SANA for that we had to get in place before our doors could be opened. The last thing we wanted was to be open and not be 100% ready and have officials come into the garden centre and just say, sorry, you're not 100% legit for the lockdown or after lockdown, and that they close our doors again. So we spent about a week before the initial lockdown was lifted. I spent about a week in the garden centre getting the garden centre ready, getting all the PPE in place, having the sanitizing stations in place, sourcing thermometers, and you all know thermometers were extremely scarce shortly before the lockdown was lifted. So getting all those things in place, and then also ensuring that our staff were educated and trained about the pandemic and about what the most impact would be if the garden centre had to pick up the virus. Many of our staff come from the rural areas and the outlying areas, so a lot of them don't have access to the information. A lot of them don't have Facebook or the news or a radio. So getting all those training manuals, getting teams in when initial lockdown was lifted, we could only have a third of our staff. So we'd have to get a team in and make sure there's enough salesmen, make sure there's someone to water, make sure there's well, we weren't doing deliveries at that stage, but as soon as the lockdown was lifted, we would do a day's training with the guys, just so that they knew what the pandemic was. Did they know what the coronavirus meant? Did they know the effect that this could have on them, their families, and their livelihood? So we would do a lot of training with them. The thing about your washing the masks, washing the uniform, a lot of them come in a taxi. And at that stage, taxis were allowed 50% capacity. So many of them were being as safe as possible. We would screen staff when they come in, ask them all the necessary questions, make sure they're sanitized, make sure they were sanitized before they entered the store. The trolleys had to be sanitized. Our workstations had to be sanitized. The staff areas at the back, eating areas, had to be sanitized. So having all those systems in place, checklists in place for management to control and make sure that all those systems were in place. A big challenge for us was paying our staff. So we knew that out of our staff suppliers, our rental, we would pay staff first. They are our biggest part of our company at this stage. We have a great team, and for us to look after them was the biggest priority in our lives. So that was our biggest thing. We applied for TERS for all of them, and fortunately, the 3 or 4 months after lockdown, most of our staff did get their TERS money, which was fantastic. A big thing, another challenge for us was keeping our staff motivated. A lot of people would come in here and be very down. We had a lot of customers with aggression coming in. People would come into the garden center and not wanting to be told what to do. Sir, lift your mask up over your nose. Sir, where's your mask? Ma'am, please take your mask off your ear, or please put your mask back on. People wouldn't like to be told what to do. So that was a big challenge in trying to keep clients happy, giving them the space that they needed. I think the whole effect of lockdown after the 5 weeks came in with people, like I said, being told what to do, and they were getting tired of it and still are. Keeping staff motivated was also a big thing. Fortunately, we were getting in nice fresh stock, and there was only a third of us at a time here, so we could every now and then treat everyone to a nice cup of coffee in the coffee lounge, or get some donuts for the day, just to uplift the staff slightly. But I think even for our staff, having been locked down at home for 5 weeks, we also found that they appreciated more their work environments. They appreciated the fact that they had a job and that they loved their job. And that was also a big plus point for our side. We found after lockdown that a lot of people had spent time in their gardens and realized that their homes were their safe place. That's where they wanted to be. And even after lockdown was lifted, and now that accommodation is open, we're finding a lot of people aren't going away, still not going away. Firstly, they don't have the money for it. Secondly, they actually have started working from home. Those guys that are working from home, that don't need to be at work, have just realized it's so much nicer being at home on a weekend with your family, in your garden, swimming around the pool, and just being in your safe place. In South Africa, yes, and as the rest of the world, we have got crime in South Africa. If you leave your home during a weekend, is my home safe? Have I locked all the doors? Have I put the alarm on? If you go out at night, is someone going to hijack me? You know, that thought does cross your mind, and that is for most of us in South Africa. But a lot of people have realized that they would rather just be at home. They'd like to be at home with their family and with their friends. When we went on to level 4 and we could reopen our stores, our store, we also realized that people would come into the garden center and be hungry for service. I found as a business owner, this was the best opportunity you had to grow your business, to provide a good service to new customers walking in. Customers wanted to be happy. If they came into your garden centre and no one helped them, no one greeted them, it would make them feel worse than when they came in. So you greet them with a smile, even though they can't see the smile under the mask, but you greet them with smiling eyes and ask them for assistance and make them feel happy. They will come back to your store. And that we found, the minute you had bad service, people tend to, well, you know what, I just don't want to go back there because I'm not happy there. And we were very, very strict with our service, our quality of plants, and our service quality to clients, because that was a huge impact also for business. People that were given great service and still are coming back tenfold during this time of year. We have probably had the best season ever in the 13 years that we have opened, and I blame that on the coronavirus and on the pandemic. I think if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have had such a great season, this growing season. Polokwane, Limpopo is going through major drought restrictions. We haven't had great rains the last 10 years, and they've predicted great rains for this year. However, we have had quite a number of rainfalls or rainstorms now, but not enough to fill up our dams. We're in dire straits with regards to dams. Most of our dams are at 10% or under 20%, and this is our growing season. Having said that, going through this major drought, and Polokwane's municipality saying to us, all gardens need to be stopped, watering needs to be stopped now for this time of year, and we're in our growing season. We didn't know what to expect. Do I need to order less stock? Do we need to order less color? What is the impact of this going to be on our season? Well, there was no impact. People have carried on because I think they again being told what to do. Don't tell me what to do. I will still garden. This is where I want to be, in my safe haven. And I think that's a lot of people's outlook, and that's why I think we've just been so busy during this time. One other thing we realized during lockdown was the amount of money that you spend unwisely and unnecessarily in your business. Just for example, paper. We weren't buying paper for printing purposes and all of that type of thing. And for 2 months after lockdown was lifted, we survived on scrap paper. Something so simple, but yet when you took into account all of those little things that you were spending just to make sure you've got clean paper in your printer. So one big thing that we learned was the restructuring of our business. And only after lockdown was lifted and we were at the store could we implement where money was being wasted on a monthly basis. And I think that was also a very big thing. We restructured business with regards to staff, where staff were working in places where they weren't. We changed a couple of salesmen around. We changed a couple of things in the garden centre around to accommodate that salesman and where his niche was. We do a lot of home gardens. We do a lot of landscaping in Polokwane. We've recently started in the last 2 years doing landscaping in developments. There are a couple of large developments in Polokwane who approached us. We did designs and have done great landscaping for them. We found that even though homeowners are spending time in their gardens and seeing the importance of having green around you and having that beautiful environment around you, we're finding a lot of our big developers in Polokwane, and I think the rest of South Africa, have realized the importance of beautifying their developments. It adds value. It cools down the area. Planting trees in a development cools down paving, cools down the whole effect of having a development or a hard concrete building around you. We're finding a lot of the developments are low maintenance, planting things like grasses and low growing, small growing trees, non-aggressive trees, things like that, that aren't requiring a lot of water. We're finding a lot of the developments are going for drip irrigation instead of spraying irrigation or overhead irrigation because of the evaporation and the shortage of water in our city. I'm also finding with home gardens, even though a lot of people are going for edible, Many people are going for water-wise. So I reckon about 50% of our gardens that we do are more water-wise, where people are wanting the rock garden with the aloes and the succulents. Many people are wanting an outdoor area for bomas where they can actually sit around, make a fire, sit out there with a glass of wine or a cup of coffee and enjoy an outdoor fire.